Today, alumna Ruth Gotian presents Networking for Introverts. Ruth is the Assistant Director for Mentoring, Executive Director of Mentoring Academy, the Chief Learning Officer in Anesthesiology, and Assistant Professor of Education in Anesthesiology at Weill Cornell Medicine. She previously ran the Weill Cornell Rockefeller Sloan Kettering Tri-Institutional MD PhD program for over 2 decades. Her research and work is focused on what makes people successful, specifically physician scientists. If you have any issues with the audio, please chat me directly in the chat box. And without further ado, Ruth Gotian.
Hi, everyone. I am Ruth Gotian. I am the, as was just mentioned, I'm the Assistant Dean for Mentoring at Weill Cornell Medicine and a very proud TC alumna. For other TC students and alumni who might be joining us, I think you will all agree with me that something about walking in those halls always feels like home. So when I was asked to do this, I didn't hesitate for a second because of my love for TC. So I am a card-carrying extrovert living in a world which to me seems that I am working with many, many, many introverts. I worked on the student side of things and now on the faculty side of things. And I realized that they know how to do their job extremely well, but there were certain necessary parts of their job, specifically networking, which was painful for them. So I decided to actually do a little bit of research about this and look into this, take a deeper dive into this, so that one of my jobs as the Assistant Dean for Mentoring at Weill Cornell Medicine, and I deal with physician scientists and educators all day long. I oversee the success of 1,800 faculty members. Networking is something they have to do, and I needed to find a way to make it less painful so that people weren't scared of it. So I am sharing with you some tips and tricks that have worked for others when I tried to share it with them, some from my research of when I looked into this issue. And I'm going to offer you a buffet of different things that you can try because not everything works for every person. I do also want to share that I started off by saying that I am an extrovert, which I am, but nobody is clearly one or the other. There are times that I show very introverted tendencies. And I'm also the wife and mother of and daughter of introverts. So I get it. So I really wanted to share with you some of the things that I'm hoping will help you and see where this goes. Okay. So I'm hoping that you have something with an internet connection so that I can just get sort of a baseline as to where everyone stands. So we're going to take 2 polls. This is the easiest way because I have people actually throughout the world that are participating. So you can go either online, if you can just log in, and we'll wait a minute or 2 for that so that you can log in, and then we can take a poll. So if you can, anything with an internet connection, log on to pollev.com/Ruth and log in, and I'll wait a moment for that. Okay, so what word do you think people use to describe you? And here are some of the things that people have shared. And for those of you who have used Poll Everywhere in the past, you'll know that the words that come up larger are the ones that are the most popular within the people who are joining us on this webinar and the poll. So you will see things like hardworking, responsible, smart, kind, passionate, ambitious, nice, funny. But you'll also see things like introverted, humble, underspoken, polite, listener, reserved, compassionate. And then we have, I see some extroverts in this group that may also be, that are also labeled as, well, they labeled themselves as extroverted, opinionated, and there was something else, persistent. So, I think we have a whole gamut here, but it's not surprising that people, when they describe introverts, they're often referred to as quiet or listener or humble or underspoken. This is very, very, very common. One thing to know is just because you're not speaking, you're not the first one to speak, and you're not the one who's interrupting, that doesn't mean you're not paying attention. So you know that, and I know that. We just need to educate others on that as well. So let's see. Okay, so you guys think you're introverts, that's why you're participating, and you are in really great company, because anywhere from a third to 1/2 of the population are actually introverts. So even though you might seem that you are an introvert in a very noisy world, in a world full of extroverts where everyone is speaking their mind and interrupting and sharing, and you just want to listen and you don't want to be in a room full of people, just know you are not alone, because at least half the people in that room are likely introverts as well. And these are some very famous introverts that you might have heard of. So just because you're an introvert does not mean that you will not succeed. You wrote that you're hardworking and that you're passionate and things like that. And introverts and extroverts alike are like that. It's just the way that they process information is different. It doesn't mean one is more intelligent than the other, or it also does not mean that one can move up ranks faster than the other. So the previous Google CEO was an extrovert, the current one is an introvert, and other famous ones who you know, everyone from Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, scientists like Einstein, political leaders, actors, actresses, authors, political activists, they are everywhere. And if you start looking at these more and more, you'll see that you recognize many of them and maybe even identify with some of them. So we're going to try another poll. What is your biggest networking challenge? And then we'll see if we can find ways to overcome some of those obstacles. So ready? Go. So as the ideas start coming in, you'll see a lot has to do with actually talking to people, figuring out what to say. Introverts always say that they need time to formulate their ideas, which is why at the end of talks, when they say, does anyone have any questions? It's always the extroverts that jump out, because we need to get it out of our mouth before we forget it, while introverts need time to formulate their questions. They also don't like chit chat, as you know, and small talk is just the worst for them. So how to connect with people in an authentic way, what to say to people, how to do it without losing sight of who you are, branding yourself, chatting with people you don't know about conversations you may not feel comfortable with, how to start that conversation, especially how to do it without looking creepy. And some people are just not comfortable doing it. So we're going to talk about really how to communicate, how to approach people, how to start that conversation, and how to really launch into that networking space in a way that will not make you feel super uncomfortable. Now, one thing that's very important that I think the extroverts need to learn is just because you like being alone does not mean that you are lonely. And let me say that again. Being alone does not mean being lonely, which means the way you network has to be different. It doesn't always need to be around a room full of people. We just got through the holiday seasons. Many of you have had office holiday party, and that might have been just cringeworthy for many of you. So let's figure out if we can find a way to do it without making you feel like someone wrote socially exhausted. So let's see if we can find a way of doing that. And I see that the topics are, the challenges are still coming in. So let's keep reading them. People want to know what to discuss. They need to know their pitch. So we'll talk about that. Staying interested in small talk, yes. Too self-conscious, social anxiety, walking into a room, that's a big deal. Asking someone, there's been a few comments about asking for help. Figuring out the right words to say is critical, and we're actually going to talk about that as well. And what to discuss. All right, I'll give some tips for that as well. Approaching someone, acting natural, okay. Ask what I want and make meaningful connections. So there's quite a bit of talk here about authenticity as well. And feeling nervous. Okay. And maintaining those relationships. So we are going to come up with tips on how you can do that. Okay, I see there's a little lull in the responses coming in, so we will move on so that we can start talking about some of these tips and tricks. Okay. So first, let's start with, why do you even need to bother going to networking events? Especially if you're not comfortable, you find them socially exhausting, you might feel socially anxious, you may not drink, and there's alcohol there, and there are people there you don't know, and people might be higher ranked than you, or it's too much noise, or too much visual or sound stimulation, and you don't feel comfortable. Why do you even need to go? Well, you really need to go, and networking definitely needs to be part of the activities that you do if you wish to get promoted and wish to get out there. You are going to find when you go to networking events that there are people that have different experiences from you. Those people may not be senior to you. It could be someone who's your peer. It could be somebody who's junior to you, but they will have experiences that can help you, just like you will have experiences that can help them. And that's where being an individual is so important. But people are not going to know about your experiences and what you can bring to the table if you don't have a way to share it with them. You also provide a different perspective. So people who are going through a challenge or they want to build something, you might have a perspective because it's part of your experience. You've done it before. It could be part of your upbringing. It could be part of your education. You always bring in a different perspective. And every time I go to networking events and we discuss whatever it is, a hiring strategy, a mentoring strategy, a workshop strategy, whatever it is, and I could just mention one thing and people say, oh, I hadn't thought of that. And the same thing is when I bring up a challenge or an opportunity and they talk about something that they have tried, and I would say, oh, I had never thought of that. So getting these different perspectives is key. You also get people with different skill sets that can help you. So if you want to start creating an activity, and let's say you want to create a blended learning curriculum, you know you want to do it, you know it's a hot topic right now. You know the broad strokes, but you don't really have that IT experience. You don't really know what's the best learning management system out there, what's the best platform to use, how do I even start this? There are people with the skills and the know-how that you really wish to connect with. You can go to a networking event and find out somebody's on the editorial team of a journal that you would really like to publish with. I have a colleague who I publish with. She is a master networker, and she has found the editors at major journals at these networking events. And since then, she has been publishing in that journal regularly. So if that's one of the things that you're interested in doing, I highly recommend it. So as you know, many jobs are not even posted, and it's a lot of from within. So you need to let people know what you do, what you're interested in. And even if you're not looking for a job, if they know who you are because they're going to have a job, if they post it later or they an opening later, you want them to think about you. So getting out there and getting your name out there is critical. So that's yet another reason to network. Also, it's all about referrals, who you know and who they know. So we all have the social media referrals such as LinkedIn, but we also have these in-person referrals that occur all the time at these networking events. So that's something that you really should consider. Finally, you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know what career options. You know, we all know that things that we were trained for are not even going to exist in a few years. So we need to know where people are headed and thinking and considering, and that's what these options are for. I have worked in higher ed for the last 27 out of 29 years, and that has been my world. And as I said, the last 22 of those years have been medical education, but there's a whole other world outside of that. And if all I ever do is hang out with higher ed and medical ed people, I wouldn't know what else is out there. So that is critical. And of course, political capital. It's not who you know, it's who the people in your network know. So here's an example. I'm trying to get a government grant for qualitative research. And for those of you who do qualitative research, you will know that the government is not very big on funding qualitative research. But I found somebody who got a grant for it. And I sent that person just yesterday a cold email saying, I'd really love to chat to figure out how you got this government grant. And I told the chair of my department that I tried to do this. And his response was, great. If you don't hear back, let me know and I will contact my friend there. And that's a political capital. It's the people who they know, and with one email, they can get a lot further than I can get because they're higher ranked and they have a bigger network of people who are not even in my network. So I need all of these things from all of these people. So to know them is helpful. You should also realize that you will need to give back and do that as well to other people. You will need to help them because you have a network that can help a lot of other people. So I want to talk a little bit about teams and why you need a mentoring team and a network of mentors. They do provide multiple perspectives. As I mentioned, they have varied experiences and they can expand your network. It's everyone who you know and that they know. So you shouldn't, when you network, only network with one type of people, but really try to share that with as many people as you can from as many diverse fields that you can, because you never know where things can lead. So when you go to these dreaded networking events of yours, you cannot leave until three things happen. People need to know who you are, right? They need to know what industry you're in, and they need to know how to get a hold of you. So what's your name? What do you do? Are you in healthcare? Are you in education? Are you in politics? Are you in the legal profession? And how would they contact you? We'll talk about this a little bit more. I am still a fan of the old-fashioned business cards, and we're going to talk about them in a minute. So you hate these networking events, but you know you need to do them. As an introvert, how can you network? And these are some of the topics that we're going to talk about to help you get through those dreaded networking events. Everything from small groups, how you approach events, something called starter sentences, the use of social media, connecting with the right people. And there were a lot of challenges. People talked about being authentic. And I definitely want to drive the point home. Don't try and be something you are not. It won't work. People will see right through it. Okay, here are some of the tips. So if you are an introvert and you're really not comfortable and you just want to hide inside a big sweater or under a blanket or at home, here are some things that you can try. Not all of them will work for you, but you can pick the ones, you can try a few, and if it may not work in one situation, it may work in another. So joining a committee. Now I know that the idea of small talk is not something that you love, but joining a committee allows you to be part of a smaller group. And if you're more interested in doing some of the behind the scenes work, so you don't have to do the social chit chat, this might be great. The one thing you need to know is when you're joining a committee, you need to, before you join a committee, figure out your strength. Are you great at big picture? Are you better at logistics? Are you better at generating ideas? Are you better at finding the right people? Know what that is, so know what value you bring to a committee, and make sure you do that. Don't try, if you don't know how to do logistics, don't volunteer to do that. Only volunteer to do what is your strength. But joining a committee allows you to be part of a smaller group. You should also volunteer to host an event to show your skills. So if you have an interest in photography, you can say, who wants to go with me to a museum? Or who wants to go hiking with me? Or who would like to go to dinner? We're going to have Tex-Mex. And you can do it with 3 or 4 people. It doesn't have to be a big group, but then you actually get to talk about topics that are of interest to you. So giving a talk, why would an introvert ever want to give a talk? Well, the reason is actually quite simple. You get to pick the topic. You get to pick the topic and talk about something that you are very comfortable with. So I deal a lot with, as I said, physicians and scientists, and actually my doctorate at TC was about optimizing success of physician scientists. I looked at the people who are physicians and also do biomedical research, and I looked at the most successful ones of our generation, including Nobel laureates and some former Surgeon General of the United States and Howard Hughes investigators and people of that level. And some of them were definitely introverts. But when you get them talking about their science, it's as if the rest of the world shuts off, and they were just in their zone, in their moment. So if you're able to give a talk about a topic that's of interest to you, this might be where you actually shine. You can give that talk and all the questions will be about this topic that you are so passionate about. So find your passion and see if you can find a platform for giving that talk. So I said I'm a big fan of using old-fashioned business cards. So when you do meet someone, and it doesn't have to be that you talk to them for a long time, we'll talk about that. It will have those 3 things we talked about before: who you are, what industry you're in, and how to reach you. When you give a business card, you're actually likely to get one as well. As soon as you get it, on the back of the business card, you write where you met the person, the date, and one thing that you talk to that person about that will resonate with them. So you can meet with someone and just talk to them for 3, 4, 5 minutes, get their business card and walk away. You are done with that networking point. The rest of the networking you will do behind a screen in the comfort of your own house, in your pajamas and fuzzy slippers. You don't have to worry about being in that social situation. But you want to be very thoughtful as to how you write that email, and you want to also write down something that was discussed so that they can remember you. So the one thing I always recommend to people is that you don't always have your wallet with you, which is where most people put their business cards, but you always have your phone with you. And I even say this to physicians, and I say it to surgeons. In the OR, they don't have their wallets with them, but they always have their phone. I gave them all pockets to put on their back of the phone, and they stick their business cards in there. And this way they can exchange it with even the other doctors, the nurses, the people in the next OR, the people in the elevator, whoever it is. And I teach them that same skill. I know some people are against the paper and they like to use the electronic business cards. I think that's great, and it definitely reduces paper. The reason I don't like it for this initial contact is because they give it to you, but then you forget to follow up because it's in your contact list and you don't have something to remind you to follow up. So you can try both ways, see what works for you. I am still a very big fan of the business cards. When I get a business card, I put it on my desk, and I know I give myself 48 hours to respond. And I have something written on the back. Oh, Joanne, it was so nice to meet you on Tuesday. I loved our discussion about blah, blah, blah. I was thinking about this since we met, and I was wondering what your thoughts were on X. And now we have a whole conversation going. Okay? You all know about the elevator pitch. We tell it to all of our students, but everyone needs to have one. So you never know who you're going to meet. You never know if you're going to be in the elevator with the president of your institution or the CEO. And you need to, again, it's that same thing, who you are, what division you're in, and how they can reach you, right? So I would say, I'm Ruth Gotian. I'm the Assistant Dean for Mentoring. I'm in charge of the success of our 1,800 faculty. Very nice to meet you. And I exchange business cards sometimes. If not, if I know if it's the CEO, I know how to reach that person. But you need to have your elevator pitch that has those three things: who you are, what field you're working in, and how they can reach you. Okay? There are people who have gotten, and I shared this story, this was at Sloan Kettering, where a colleague of mine was in the elevator with a postdoctoral fellow. And in walked in the chief medical officer of the hospital. And she said, oh, so-and-so, this is, and she introduced the postdoc fellow who's working on whatever she was working on. And that was the introduction. They chatted for 30 seconds, and that was it. A month later, the chief medical officer contacts my colleague, and he said, I got a call for nominations for an award in this field. Who was that person you introduced me in the elevator that happens to be working in that field? And don't you know, the chief medical officer who met this person for 30 seconds nominated her for a big award because that person was in his mind. So you need to always have that pitch ready. We're going to talk, and I'll give you some examples of some starter conversation sentences. A lot of the things that you guys wrote had to do with communication. How do you start that conversation? How do you have an icebreaker? What do you talk about? How do you approach somebody? So I'll give you some examples of some starter conversation sentences, which will be key and will really reduce that anxiety level. Now, this last point, or I don't know if it's the last point, but for introverts especially, social media, email, listservs, working behind the screen is going to be your saving grace because you can take the time to formulate your ideas. You don't need to respond in real time. And some of the most successful introverts I work with are actually very, very, they work quite a bit with the social media and on different listservs. So I want you to consider using that to elevate your brand and to be able to network, because that counts. That's considered networking. When you're communicating and contacting other people, that is networking. No one says it always has to be face-to-face. Twitter especially has taken on a whole new world and is actually used quite a bit in the professional Professional platforms, we talked about email a little bit, and listservs. I also recommend when you have guest speakers, you can either organize that person or coming in and listening. And here's the thing. The first time I gave this talk, it was actually to students, and I was at some conference, and I don't know how I mentioned it as an offhand of, oh, I've got some tips if, because the introverts there were saying that they had some challenge with this. I said, oh, I have some tips. I'd be happy to share them. Before I know I was giving this talk, and I was working with a student who I had known for 2 years. I communicated more with that student in the organization of that workshop than I did in all the 2 years combined. And it was 99% done via email. And so, this gave him a way to communicate and network, and it really worked out beautifully for him. So now when it comes to doing things like that, I try to, any introvert who's interested, I try to give them those opportunities to organize, if they have an idea, to come up with a speaker, contact the speaker, etc. Also listen to what they're saying, and you can always, again, follow up with an email. Most speakers put their emails at the end when you're ready and you have your question formulated. Same things with meetings and conferences. You can, it's the same idea, just on a bigger scale. You can organize, etc. I also recommend arriving early. And the reason I do that is the speaker is always there early to set up and to check the IT and all of this. And then they're just sort of standing around for 15 minutes. And, I tell people whenever I give a talk, I'm like Michael Phelps. I have my blinders on and I am just super focused, right? Until I'm super focused. I've done everything I can do. And then I'm just sort of standing there, awkwardly standing there. And when somebody arrives early, it at least gives me someone to talk to. And if there's a speaker that you're interested in, if you arrive 15 minutes early, they're very often just standing there, trying not to look awkward. You're putting them out of an agonizing situation. And you could say, hi, Dr. So-and-so, very nice to meet you. And then again, you're going with those 3 things: who you are, what your department you're in, and how they can contact you. And you might want to ask them a question that you had already thought of in advance, especially if you're not comfortable asking that question in a big group. But now you're there early and it might be just one-on-one. So you might want to think about arriving early. I would recommend going to those things that are smaller, lectures, demos. They're smaller groups, and it might be easier, and they're people with the same interests as you. I don't know if you know, but there are also groups that for that time when you do want to go out that are built around things that you are passionate about. So there's actually meetups for people by Myers-Briggs groupings. I found this out and I thought it was fascinating. So if you're an INTJ, for example, there's actually a meetup for groups like that. There's also a group for yogis. There are meetups for people who like orchids, whatever it is. You can find that. When you're ready to expand your wings and try other things, you might want to attach yourself to the groups that your friends are involved with. Because remember, your friends have different backgrounds than you, different perspectives than you, different experiences than you. When you're ready to join a different group with people who are not exactly like you, start with your friends first, because they're your safety group. And you know that you'll always have a friend there, somebody that you're comfortable with. And then you can learn other things as well while you're in that group. When you go to groups that meet on a regular basis, like for example, yoga or a book club or something like that, you're more likely to see the same people every single time, and that reduces the stress level and the anxiety level. And especially those who go to TC or went to TC, you know about community of practice because we talk about these things all the time. For those who don't know, community of practice is a group of people who It's usually professional who are like you. So for example, I ran the MD PhD program here for 22 years. I was in a community of practice with other people who did that. I was in a few. I was in a regional one. So that would be people who ran those kind of programs at other New York-based medical schools. And I was also in a national one, which was of people from, it's 200 people from the entire country. And then I was in a third one. This is all related to MD PhD, of very seasoned people who did this work, people who have done this for 15, 20 years, 25, 30, even one was 40 years, because our needs were very different than someone who has been doing this for 5 years. So all part of MD PhD, but I was part of different groups. Yes, we had conferences. Yes, we had meetings, but we communicated by email more than anything else. So I encourage you within your own professional sphere to join a community of practice. If they don't have one, you can start one. It starts with as easy as an email listserv. That's what it starts with. There's actually one woman in the Midwest who, she's a female physician. I think she's a surgeon, and it was coming to a time where she just couldn't find a lot of people like her. She actually created her own community of practice. They now have a conference every year. Over 300 people come. So, but again, it starts small. It starts with an email listserv. And I highly, highly, highly recommend that you do that. It also means when you meet the person in person, it'll be a little bit easier for you because you've already been communicating with them. Okay, so now you have to go to this dreaded networking event. How are you going to survive? The first thing is, and this was some of the challenges that some of you listed, do not try to be something you are not. If you're an introvert, don't pretend to be an extrovert. It doesn't work for you. It doesn't work for other people. You are who you are. You have certain things that make you unique, and that's what you need to be proud of, right? You're great at thinking big picture, or you have excellent observation skills or listening skills or thought process or planning or whatever it is. That's who you are. That's who you should be. We're all grown-ups. Don't try to be something you're not, right? We have enough with kids trying to do that. You be your own person. It's the most authentic. That's why people hired you. That's why people want to be around you. Just be that. No one says that you have to network in large groups. You can network in very small groups. So try that as a different approach. You don't have to go to the CEO's holiday party with 500 people. You can go to something within your department that might be 20 people. That's okay. You should practice active and appreciative listening when you are there. So if you decide that you're going to go to a networking event, and we'll talk about time limits in a moment, when you are there, you are all in. You are actually really listening. You see it. People see it in your body language. They see it when you're nodding your head. They see it with your eyes. They see it when you say, uh-huh, that's right. Oh, thank you. Right? So you're going to practice that active listening and appreciative listening. It's always easier when you can enter an event with someone you know. Even as an extrovert, I don't like walking into a crowded room by myself. I always seek out another person who will come with me. Most people do not like to enter by themselves. And I have asked everyone from the chair of the department to a student, a secretary, an administrator. I don't care who I walk in with, as long as I don't have to walk by myself and walk in by myself. And if you want, you can always, if you don't want to say, I'm not comfortable walking into large rooms by myself, I always say, do you want to share an Uber? And most people do. So you might want to consider that. So this is a tip. So I actually asked a lot of people who I know, and these are some of the tips that they gave me as well. And they said, find someone who's younger than you and approach them. Because if you think you're uncomfortable, even if they're really extroverts, if they're very young in a room full of people who are older than them, they are very uncomfortable. And now if you're going in, if you have even 6 months more experience than they do, you are now the mentor because you have those perspectives and experiences they don't have. So go up to somebody who's younger, introduce yourself, and now you have somebody that you can go talk to. You're going to feel better, and they are definitely going to feel much better. And you'll know that when you make someone else feel better, you automatically will feel better yourself. Okay. There is nothing wrong with saying, I am going to be at this networking event for 55 minutes. It doesn't even have to be a whole hour, 55 minutes. And when you approach one particular person, and you might say, I need to make contact with these 5 people, give yourself a time limit of how long you are willing to talk to them, right? 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever you think you're comfortable with. And when those 10 minutes are up, you just go to the restroom and regroup. And that's fine. There is absolutely fine to go to the restroom and regroup, okay? Or you have to check something on your phone, or you just got a text from home, whatever it is. But give yourself a time limit to talk to someone, and then go find your quiet space so that you can just get that equilibrium again. And as I said, give yourself a time limit for the networking event. And if you don't make it around hour, it'll seem much shorter. So instead of 60 minutes, say, I'm going to be there for 45 minutes. Nobody's going to know the difference. Nobody is going to know. I was at a holiday event for a very senior dean at the institution. The dean was there for half the event for his own party, and I didn't see him for the other half. And the people who came in later and they said, where is this senior dean? And I said, I don't know, he must have left. So they left too. They just wanted to be seen by that person. So figure out who those people are that you want to talk to, who needs to see that you were there. Give yourself that time limit and then go leave. That's it. That's fine. All right. In between, when you don't find somebody you want to talk to, or you need to wrap your mind about what you're going to talk about, and there's not always a quiet corner, I always recommend, especially if it's in somebody's house, this is always helpful, either look at the art on the walls and do a whole walk around the room looking at the art as if you're at the Met. It's the most exciting piece of artwork you've ever seen, or look at the books on the shelves. And then someone else will usually join you if they see you looking at the books on the shelves. So people mentioned that one of their challenges is they didn't know how to start the conversation. So I want to talk a little bit about your intro. You should have a 10 to 30 second introduction of yourself. Hi, I'm Dr. Ruth Gotian. I am the Assistant Dean for Mentoring at Weill Cornell Medicine. I oversee the success of 1,800 faculty members, period. That's my intro. I then pivot to ask about them. Ask them a question. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't get your name. What department are you in? Talk another 30 seconds about yourself. Then you ask a question of the other person. So you're trying to deflect off of yourself if you're not comfortable talking about yourself. And then you do that active and appreciative listening. And then you repeat the whole process. So if you see, you're really only talking about yourself for 60 seconds, but you're getting the other person to do the talking, and you're doing what you do best. You're listening. That's it. And if you can do that 3 to 5 times throughout the event, you can be out of there in 45 minutes or less. Now, people were talking about they don't quite know how to start the conversation, and they want to find a way to start the conversation without actually feeling creepy when they're asking people about themselves. So we have these friends that we have dinner with about once a month, and he is definitely an introvert. Both the husband and wives are introverts. The husband hides it better. He knows how to work better as an extrovert because those are the people he has to work with. So he knows how to pivot as needed. But I already know the signs. So every time we see him, which is about once a month, he says to me, so what's new and exciting in the medical education field? And right away, he got me talking. And this is a pattern that happens every single month. So you might want to start when you see someone, even if you know, and even if you know they're working in another department. So what's new and exciting in the legal profession, right? Rarely are they going to say nothing. They're going to start talking about some big project they're working on. So here are some starter sentences you may wish to consider when you approach someone. So something like, what brought you here? Or how'd you hear about this event? Were you stuck in traffic? What a gorgeous venue. I had this once. We were at I don't know, some event. It was one of the most beautiful things. And I kept looking at the view. And then I would talk to someone, have you ever been here before? And they say, yes, I had such and such an event. And then we started talking about that event. So for those of you who are in New York City, it's very easy to ask. So was it a pain for you to get here today? I work, as I mentioned, with a lot of physicians who are in the OR. Everyone wears the same color scrubs every day, and they try to differentiate themselves by their socks. So I often talk about socks. And at events, I like to talk about shoes because I also like shoes. If it's at a conference, I ask questions about the conference. Which speaker did you really like? And, you know, if you are a fan of the Stephen Brookfield work, you can say, what surprised you about the conference? Just look at his critical incident questionnaire. What surprised you about the conference? What speaker really got you engaged? So you may want to think about those kind of questions. Are you giving a talk or a poster? Oh, now you're getting them talking about their research. This can go on for a very long time. If it's an organization you have to be a member of, how long have you been a member? Or how long have you worked here? I'm very proud to say I worked at Weill Cornell Medicine for 22 years. And I can talk to you about the 5 different deans that we've had, the different types of students, how admissions has changed, and we can go on for a very long time. So these are some starter sentences that can really get you out of that stumbling block. And again, most of the time you're getting the other person to talk. I want to close it up with a few book recommendations. And these are some of my favorites. So you'll see in the middle the discussion book. I'm a big fan of Stephen Brookfield's work. He's a TC faculty member. He wrote the discussion book, and then a couple of years ago, he wrote this, the discussion book, 50 Great Ways to Get People Talking. This is fabulous for those of you who are either teaching or working in teams and need to find ways to get everyone to share their ideas. And there's 50 different ideas that he gives, including starter questions. So you might want to try that. The book Quiet by Susan Cain, she's given TED Talks. She has an introvert, and she really gives a look behind the curtain as to what are some of the things that introverts go through every day. The Introvert's Way, Living a Quiet Life in a Noisy World, is one that I more recently read and really enjoyed. It's written in a very lighthearted, funny way, and I definitely enjoyed it. And then there's Improve Your Social Skills. The Quiet Introvert's Way and Improve Your Social Skills are probably the 3 biggest books on the market right now. And I know they're also available on Audible for those who like that as well. So finally, I offer questions. Now, the reason I have Linda Carter there as Wonder Woman is because I mentioned I talk to physicians and scientists a lot, and when they ask questions, when they learn, they learn by poking holes. So it's like having daggers being thrown at you, and I always feel I need to have my deflectors on. But when you work with educators, and this is what TC enlightened me to, the questions are really to enhance the knowledge, and you don't really feel like you're being attacked, which was a whole different world for me, and a very nice one. So I am really excited to answer any questions or comments you had. I had a few starter phrases there for you, if that would help you get started. If you want to network later, or you want to ask your question a little bit later because you need a little bit more time to formulate it or you need to run, there is my email. And I'm also quite active on Twitter and LinkedIn, so feel free to join. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Ruth.
Absolutely.
If you have questions, please feel free to insert them into the questions pane and I'll start reading through them. I love that you have these starter phrases. This is perfect. So I have one question, and it is, what is a good starter question when you've met someone before and it's inappropriate to ask the basics of who they are?
So I would go back to what's new and exciting in the field of whatever their field is, right? And I can now ask that to, when I heard that, I thought that was the best starter phrase ever. And, you know, as I said, my friend who sees me every month asks that, and now I ask that for people in every single field. It also gives me an insight into their field, right? I ask that to our lawyer who's here all the time, and I get to hear some of the big challenges that they're working on. Everything from Title IX to privacy issues to research confidentiality issues to intellectual property issues. I mean, if I didn't ask that question, I never would get the insight. I hope that answered the question.
The next question is, what is the most graceful way to end a conversation without seeming rude or too abrupt?
Well, you can say, would you like a refill on your drink? Or I see so-and-so, I just want to go say hi. Or I just got a text, I need to run out and see who that is. I need to make sure there's not a problem with whatever. Just say, I came here and I left a little crisis at the office. I just want to go check in that everything's okay. So just the same way that you have these starter sentences, and this gives me an idea, I should really add this to the presentation, is closing sentences as well. So those are some things, and you know, I blame a lot on my kids. I always say I have to check in. We're having a Civil War history crisis that we need to solve, and I try to make it funny so that they don't feel I'm trying to ditch them.
Great. So the next question is, what do you mean by active and appreciative listening? Does this involve body gestures as well?
Yes. So you don't want to look like a concrete wall. You want to look like you're paying attention. And those are the things like nodding, leaning in a little bit closer, saying, I agree, or asking questions throughout. So how did you handle such and such? And again, you can do that by, you have to be listening and truly listening in order to be able to ask those questions. So it is the body language, it is the nodding, it is not looking at your phone while they're talking, but actually looking at them in their eyes, or if you're not comfortable looking at people's eyes, I recommend looking at their nose. And then keep nodding and saying, and absolutely, I agree. Have those few phrases.
Fantastic. What about, how do you reintroduce yourself to someone senior whom you've met before when you aren't sure they probably remember you?
Oh, you could just say, hi, I'm Ruth Gotian from the Mentoring Academy. We actually met a while back. I don't know if you remember, it was in this situation. Anyway, I've really followed your work and I'm really excited about whatever. But again, you're trying to deflect. You just need to say who you are and what area you're from, right? I'm Ruth Gotian. We met at whatever conference. You can tell them. And if you can describe it in such a way that it creates a picture, We met at such and such a conference in Arizona in July. It was 100 degrees at 7 a.m. We met on the Starbucks line. Oh, now I have an image of what that looks like. And maybe that'll trigger something. And if not, don't worry about it. Just give your name and where you're from and what you do, and continue the conversation.
Fantastic. The next question we have is, how do you break into an existing group's conversation at an event?
Oh, that is so hard. Again, if you know one of the people who were there, you just go up and say, you just stand there. And most people are polite enough that they will open up the circle. And if you want to, you can come in and just say, hi there, so good to see you guys. And that's it. I would just walk up. And you know what I realized? And no one's going to push you away. It took me a long time to realize that, and it took me a while to realize that once I rose through the ranks. You can sit at the most senior person's group and join their group. They will never turn you away, ever. So just join them. Just join them. I went up to an event where there was the former CEO of Xerox, and I must have been chatting with someone or doing something because I came in late. And it was a sit down lunch, and the only spot was in the table right in front of the stage. That was the only spot. So I just sat down. And you know who happened to be there? The chief operating officer of the hospital, the two organizers of the event, and the former CEO of Xerox. And you know what? Nobody pushed me away. Nobody told me to get up and leave. So I sat there and I chatted as if I belonged. And they thought I did. So try it.
So we have one person who she attends a lot of networking and informational interviews, even though she's an introvert, but the struggle that she's having is building a mentoring relationship. She's heard people talk about asking someone to be a mentor, but she doesn't know how to broach the subject. What would you recommend when you meet someone who you think would be a good mentor?
So that's a whole other presentation that I give. And finding a mentor is key, but I also recommend finding a team of mentors. I also strongly suggest that you don't say to someone, will you be my mentor? It's very confining, and right away they're thinking, what are the time commitments to all of this? You don't ask someone to be your friend. So why would you ask someone to be your mentor? So you can actually get mentoring advice from people and not have that official label of they are my mentor, I'm their mentee. It's only after a while that you have this relationship where you can then send them an email and say, thank you very much for all your mentorship and guidance. It's greatly appreciated, et cetera, et cetera. I had a student who I have known him for 7 years. And just last week, he mentioned to me that he considers me one of his mentors. I had no idea. I had never even thought of it. He said, you've given me guidance for 7 years. What'd you think it was? I said, oh, you're right. But I never gave myself that label. He never asked to give me that label, but it was after the fact. So you can go up to people who help you, or you want them to help you. And if they give you guidance, they're your mentors. They don't need a placard that says that. So you don't need to ask them, because it's very confining and stressful for them, because they're going to think, I need to give you an hour or two a week. We need to do this. We need to do that. You don't need to do that.
Great. So this is going to be the last question, because I just want to be mindful of everyone's times. I know there's a lot of other questions in the queue, and I'm so sorry that we can't answer all of them, but please definitely reach out to Ruth on her email or Twitter. But the very last question I'm going to ask is, so you go to a networking event, you meet people, you exchange a couple of emails. What's the next step to keep the conversation going and develop and maintain these connections you've received?
So you now are starting, you have this communication. You don't have to email them every week, but I like to recommend that you communicate with people either once a quarter or once every 6 months, depending on who they are. So you can reach out to them before I go to a conference. If it's someone I know who's in that field, I will reach out to them probably 3-4 weeks in advance and say, oh, I'm going to be at the whatever conference. Any chance you'll be there? And then they'll say yes. And I'll say, oh, would you like to meet up for coffee? Right? Or if you're writing a paper, you'll say to someone, I'm writing a paper on this issue. I really was hoping either you might have some time or you might know of someone who could read it over and give me some feedback before I submit it for a publication. You want to, give an ask that's not an enormous ask. And then every so often, what I do is if I have had some sort of achievement, I actually share it with some people, people who help me get there, right? So it's not just this bragging about yourself, but it's just a nice little email about either here's an article I wrote or a presentation I gave. Thank you for all of your advice for helping me get to this point. I especially your guidance on such and such was very helpful to reaching this point. Here's the article, here's a link to the presentation, here's whatever it is. So, or every so often you can say, dear so-and-so, I was just thinking about you last week. I had met someone and your name came up in conversation because we were talking about whatever. So you might want to think about doing that every quarter or so.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for all your questions. I'm so sorry we couldn't go through all of them. Please feel free to reach out to Ruth at her email or Twitter. Ruth, thank you so much for taking the time to share your expertise with the TC community. A video of this presentation will be available on our website, and that website URL again is www.tc.edu/alumni/career webinars, and you will also receive an email in the next few days with a link to the presentation as well. Please visit our website for more information about our monthly webinars and upcoming events. We hope you can join us for our next webinar, Knockout Presentations, Be Clear, Concise, and Confident, on February 13th with alumna Diane DeResta. Thank you again all for joining us, and we hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you.